Welcome to Buffalo Sports Page. I'm Stu Boyar along with Tony Fiorello and Bud Bailey. Today's show is sponsored by the Paul Wolf Insurance Agency, Logistics Plus of Buffalo, and Dan Chacha Personal Injury Attorneys. Well, guys, that was a blowout in the Super. I think they had the MVP wrong. The MVP should have been the Eagles' defense, the whole thing,
I just
or
put up the
Sweat
awards,
or
too.
Williams. But they gave it to Jalen Hurts, who, let's give him his due. He was outstanding. He's an elite quarterback. I don't know why he wasn't considered elite before this.
I always thought Hurts was a top 10 guy, at least.
That neighborhood.
I mean,
But
right up there with all of them, right?
yeah, somebody, in fact, Dave Kerner, who used to work with at WEBR, and he was at WBEN. He suggested that should be a most valuable coordinator, and said, "Well, that's probably a little ugly. It's hard to fly Vic to Disney World after the game. You really want a player."
Especially, yeah, it's true. So there's a question down here. What was the turning point in the game for the Eagles? How about the coin toss?
The coin toss did.
I mean, I don't think in all the Super Bowls, I don't remember one team dominating the way the Eagles dominated the Chiefs.
Oof. That Seattle Broncos game from about 10 years ago,
Okay,
that one was pretty bad.
that was a dominate. That's the one with the high snap over Peyton Manning.
Yeah, and it was just all downhill from there, from what I remember.
I'm sure there's been a few, but the coin flip and the first couple series, you just kind of sensed something was going on. And what struck me was, overall, we've all talked about the Chiefs and shuffling offensive line or whatever, and we thought they were doing a good job of juggling, and I guess they were. But they went up against arguably the best defensive line in the league as a group, and after about 8 minutes, you just said, the Chiefs are in trouble here because they're losing the line of scrimmage horribly. Yeah. And what are they going to do? And, it's run for your lifetime.
They got ragdolled up, and they never blitzed, just the front four.
That number was incredible to me. When I saw it after the game, I think it was from their next-gen stats department. They said Mahomes dropped back 42 times, and they didn't blitz once. It's only the fourth time in the last, I think, like 8 or 9 years it's happened. That's crazy.
There's a stat that I heard that kind of sums it up. The Bills' struggles against Kansas City. And all those playoff games against KC, the Bills have had 6 sacks. Eagles had 6 sacks in the Super Bowl.
Oh, man.
Kind of sums it up, doesn't it?
Yeah. I'll tell you what. I mean, and the guy that they really took advantage of was the left guard who was filling in. Because if you remember, they had moved Joe Tooney, the left guard, the all-pro left guard. They moved him to left tackle. And they put a backup in Mike Caliendo. And guys like Jalen Carter and Milton Williams were just running him ragged.
Well, to me, Sweat was the guy who set the tone
Him
for
too.
all of it, and I thought he was the MVP. But they don't like to give MVPs to defensive guys.
Nah.
I mean, they ragged out that entire offensive line. It was like, wow. Mahomes couldn't do anything.
Might have been a split vote there. Maybe a
Williams,
couple guys on the defensive line got votes, and Hurts got some. And
That's why I said give
yeah.
it to the defense. But I don't want to take anything away from
No.
him. That touchdown throw was magnificent.
yeah,
It was not a fun game. Well, if you hate the Chiefs, it was a fun game to watch. But I was hoping
for a while.
I was hoping for a much better game.
Yeah.
I was kind of running out of steam in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
I didn't watch the post game. I was like, that's enough.
You know,
Terry Bradshaw butchered that, but
the one thing that I think also surprised me, not only necessarily how the Eagles performed defensively, but offensively, the way I saw it coming into the game was they were going to have to run the ball really well with Saquon Barkley in that offensive line. And I think a lot of people thought that was going to be the key to Philadelphia's win. But they won that game with Hurts, his arm, throwing it to a really talented group, and his legs. And that's why he ended up winning the MVP. And he played pretty well,
I mean, the one thing the Chiefs did well was contain Barkley for the most part.
Right, and that surprised me because no one had contained him. But you wonder, or I wonder, let's get the English right. I wonder if the Chiefs were preoccupied by Barkley and came up with a defensive scheme to make sure he didn't run wild and paid for it in other ways.
I think that could have been the case, but I really think the Chiefs were just stunned that they were so badly out-physicaled. Mm-hmm. I mean, that Eagles defense they were phenomenal. And Kansas City got repeatedly punched in the face again and again, and they had no answer, no response, none. I mean, even Mahomes, as great as he is, couldn't make anything happen. They couldn't run the ball. They had nothing.
And you talk about the Eagles' defense, deservedly so. The offense scored 94 points in the last two games.
Cooper DeJean could have been a Buffalo Bill.
Could have been, but wasn't.
I thought about that when he had the pick six. I was like, Bills could use some of these guys on defense, but
Yeah.
just a chance you have. Hey, what does the loss mean for like Reed, Mahomes, Kelsey? Does it mean anything other than the fact that they lost the game?
I don't think so. I mean, there's a lot of people on social media, complaining about Mahomes and saying, "Oh, he's got a long way to go to catch Tom Brady." Well, the way you, if you want to compare it to that, you know what Tom Brady's record was in his first 5 Super Bowls? 3-2, the exact same record as Patrick Mahomes.
Really, I didn't realize that.
3-2, and that was by the time he turned 34. Mahomes is 29.
Well, I'll tell you what. I hate the whole argument that to be truly great, you have to win or be in a Super Bowl. I hate that.
Yeah.
I mean, tell me again, Dan Marino wasn't a great quarterback.
Right.
Tell me again,
And
Jim Kelly wasn't a Hall of Famer.
Ernie Banks stunk for the Cubs.
Right. These are team sports.
Yeah.
It's not just about the individuals. I mean, O.J. Simpson never won a Super Bowl, right?
One playoff game.
He wasn't a great player. Well, I mean, he obviously had a lot of other faults, but as a football player, he was fantastic. But he never won a championship.
And it's the same thing with Andy Reid. I mean, he's got 3 rings as a head coach, but he's also got 3 losses now.
Doesn't. Yeah, I, mean,
I know, but
so what?
exactly, he's still got
coach.
3 rings at the end of the day.
He's a great coach, and that was one of the other not funny, but it was like whatever plan that Andy Reid had, nothing worked. So as great as he is,
You just see him with the flare pen going, nope.
well, the last time an Eagles coach won a Super Bowl, he was fired 2 years later.
Peterson, yeah, that downfall was not very good for Doug Peterson.
Well, Sirianni had a great year, then they had an off year, and then they come back and win a Super Bowl. So whatever he did, changing coordinators, seemed to work pretty well, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's the I've never met him. His brother Jay is a great guy. He's done a lot of work for Section 6. He coached Southwestern football. His wife's the girls' basketball coach. They're always at Buff State, so and his dad when he was coaching, was a great coach. So it's a coaching family, and congratulations to Nick. And that's a tough town to succeed in sports. I was watching a Mike Schmidt documentary on the MLB network last night. It's like, man, that's one tough town.
Mm-hmm. They did boo Santa Claus, as we all know.
No, that is not true.
I was born there.
That's not true.
Moved after 6 weeks. They booed me out of town. I did something wrong. Said, you're gone.
It's a story that is like a legend, but it's really not true.
Really?
They did an NFL Films thing on that, and they said they didn't really boo Santa Claus. Now, the other question is, how far away, and I don't like the way this question is phrased, how far are the Bills from beating a team like the Eagles? You don't know that the Bills would have lost to the Eagles because each game is different. But let's put it this way. I think the Bills are very close, obviously, to being a Super Bowl team. Now, that's the thing in this league. Every team's got holes, right? Name a team that doesn't have holes. And just because Philadelphia won 40-22 and dominated Kansas City doesn't mean there are holes on that team. They have less holes.
They weren't exploited well.
There you go.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm just saying I can't name a single hole in Philadelphia. I said that going into the game, and I still believe that now.
Okay.
But I mean, that's just my opinion, if whatever it's worth. But
Okay, well, I'm sure there are things they could do better too.
Remember, Philadelphia didn't win the conference.
Right. That's a good point. They didn't.
yeah, that was Detroit. That's true.
So,
They're just playing the best at the right time of year. And
well, that and they played their best game probably. And here's the other thing: they were probably healthier than anybody. Even with the injuries, they had some offensive linemen banged up in a championship game, and lo and behold, there they were in the Super Bowl.
Let me make a point about Sean McDermott. And right now, he seems to be on the Chuck Knox, Marty Schottenheimer path of excellent coaches who didn't make it to the Super Bowl. But you look at the talent, and we talked about this just before we turned on the microphones, but the Bills did not have a Pro Bowler on defense. 3 guys on offense now. Cook was a late addition, Allen and Dawkins. How many teams reached the Super Bowl with 0 guys in the Pro Bowl on their defense?
Probably none. It just doesn't happen.
I mean, this was going to be a difficult year because of salary caps, and they had a lot of changes, and the secondary was a few fill-ins and last-minute replacements or whatever, and you kind of figured they'd take a step back, and they really maintained that level. And I think McDermott's got to get credit for that.
Well, I 1,000% agree with that. There was almost like a philosophical change in terms, with Joe Brady coming in and they running the ball more. It was a fun year. It was a great year until it ended, but there's only going to be one team that's happy anyway. But they have a lot Tony and I were just looking at this list, as you were, of Bills under expiring contracts and players with 1 year to go on their contracts. So Mr. Bean has his work cut out for him as to who to sign, who not to sign, and who to extend, and which ones on the. I mean, they got some. Greg Rousseau, Khalil Shakir, and I think James Cook are three guys who have 1 year left on their contract. So what do? You can't pay everybody.
Nope.
Unless you're Howie Roseman in Philadelphia. He seems to figure out a way to pay all those
Steve
guys.
Cohen with the Mets.
Yeah, him too. No salary cap there.
Dodgers too, yeah.
Yeah, they're outrageous.
Luxury tax, though.
Yeah. Doesn't seem to bother. It's a luxury for them. So if you're Brandon Bean, what's your first priority? You would think it would be all defense.
Yeah, but you also need to be able to figure out a way to be able to put some sort of speed in the Bills.
Well, to take advantage of Josh Allen's arm is what you're saying.
The rumor, maybe like a day or two ago that was coming out was that Josh Allen is kind of pushing for the Bills to sign Marquise Brown. Hollywood Brown. He used to be in Baltimore and was spent last year with the Chiefs. That guy's got some speed and he could push down the field vertically.
It was a non-factor in the Super Bowl.
Well, he had been banged up for most of the year.
I don't want a
veteran. A red uniform.
I don't want a veteran guy who's all banged up like that. It's like I wouldn't take Brandon.
Well,
Ayuk. I wouldn't take. Why would you trade for Deebo Samuel? There's too many miles and
there's too many miles on Deebo, yeah. But I mean, at the end of the day, you still need somebody to be able to stretch.
Well, true. I mean, even Cooper Kupp. Too many miles, too many injuries.
Yeah, and plus,
harsh.
Getting a guy like Cooper Kupp, it's kind of like
what they already have.
They already have that in Shakir, and he's just younger,
Well, you got to hope Keon Coleman takes a big step forward next year, and I'd still like to see him add to the wide receivers.
Yeah. And we were talking about the defense before, you can't really overmake your defensive line in one night. You look at Philadelphia, they rebuilt that line over, a span of really about 2 years or so.
Well,
especially now because you play 6-7 guys. Mm-hmm. It's not like you take one guy and plug him in forever. You really need a team, your whole unit to come through.
Well, the
Unless
problem,
Myles Garrett.
Well, I'd love to get Myles Garrett, but the Bills' problem has been defense in these playoff games, and it starts up front with the defensive line. I mean, the Philadelphia defensive line essentially won that game, in my opinion. The Bills' defensive line lost a lot of those games.
I think the intent with Von Miller,
yes,
the experiment is over, was for him to fill that role as a pass rushing.
Until he got hurt.
And, he did it fine for that first year, for part of the first year, and then got hurt and was never quite the same. Had a few moments, but that's not the Von Miller we remember. And that's, he's past 30 and injured and all that, and that's going to happen. But still, that was, I think it was a good concept in hindsight, but it didn't work.
So now the question, does that influence in any way, shape, manner, or form them going out and trying to acquire a Myles Garrett or, for argument's sake, a Max Crosby?
I was thinking of Garrett, and last week I said, what would you give up? And I threw out a 1 and a 2 and a 1, and I'm thinking, well, the Bills have the 30th pick. They took Keon Coleman in that spot. So is Coleman another guy like Coleman next year if the Bills have a good year and then a second-round pick? Is that enough to get Myles Garrett? I don't think so.
No, probably not. So they've got very difficult decisions, and we're all so frustrated because they came so close. And it was tough. It was a great season with an ending that we didn't enjoy. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll move on to perhaps to the Sabres and some other topics. You're watching Buffalo Sports Page. I was thinking that when you did that.
Just results.
Your life can change in an instant after an injury. You need a trusted partner at your side. Hi, I'm Dan Chacha. At Dan Chacha Injury Attorneys, we're here to help you navigate the challenges you'll face. Our dedicated team fights tirelessly for your rights, ensuring you get the compensation you deserve. Don't worry, Chacha's got you. Call Dan Chacha Injury Attorneys today for a free consultation. Your injury is our priority.
Call 648-3030. Just results.
Explore your next idea. Blaze new trails. Imagine new ways to do things. What will you do next?
Welcome back to Buffalo Sports Page, this week in Buffalo Sports. Let's move along to our favorite hockey team, the Buffalo Sabres. And we know what we'd like to see out of the Sabres when they come back out of this 2-week hiatus for the Four Nations tournament.
The Sabres aren't losing a game for 2 weeks. What could be better?
Fair point. We'd like to see them win a bunch when we come back, but the reality is they have a mountain to climb, and I don't think any of us has any faith that they can climb it.
I think I checked their playoff probability on one of the analytics, 1%. Yeah.
I saw that 1%. I was like, wow.
If you want to compare it to a mountain, I've only got faith in maybe take like 3 steps up that mountain and then fall right back down.
Hey, they did win 4 in a row, and they, that Nashville game, it was like, I thought I want to know how you can say the goal's offside when you can't see the puck. They had that one shot where it looked offside, but they had to have other angles, and none of them that I saw. In fact, they only showed the one on TV. Usually have.
Does
3, 4,
Toronto have
5.
angles that the public does not?
At that, I don't know.
Possible.
It is possible, but I mean, again, they didn't really deserve to win that game because there are too many errors that are like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Forwards don't come back, giveaways, the whole 9 yards are just it's sad, really.
The story
what do
of
you-
their existence last few years.
Well, yeah, since 2011, that's a long time. What do you think, Kevin Adams? What kind of moves does he make, if any?
When's the trading dedeadline? Like March 1st?
7th?
Yeah.
Early March, yeah, because
First week of
probably
March,
backed up
so.
because of the 2-week break.
Yeah, right.
Um,
Although I thought they moved it up. Didn't they move it up last year or 2 years ago? They moved it up a week or two or something.
They used to have it in late February for a while, but I think because of the Four Nations, they pushed it back to the beginning of March.
I don't know what the Sabres contract situation is with veterans or whatever, whether there's guys out there that they could move for draft choices, whether it's time to,
No more draft choices,
yeah.
please.
Well,
Or prospects.
that's what you traditionally do, get something as opposed to letting them walk away, and draft choices is the usual currency. But if you're going to write off the season, I think you have to look at things like that.
Yeah, I mean, here we are again, hoping to get the first overall draft pick again. And this is not one of those years where you have a Cabrini.
Yeah,
one of
Celebrini,
those
yeah.
top-notch guys. So what can he do? It's got to be veteran. I mean, back in the day, Darcy Regier, who he was really a really, really good GM. Whatever faults he had, made some great trades. He got Tim Connolly in a trade. That was when Michael Pekka was holding out. Was it John Muckler who made the Michael Pekka trade?
McGillney for Michael Pekka, yeah.
McGillney, Mike Wilson, and Jay McKee for McGillney for Pekka, Wilson, McKee.
Okay, that's a good trade. That was Muckler, yes?
Yes.
Okay. And, of course, Jerry Meehan is the guy who brought McGillney.
How often do the star for prospects, how often does that work? Ask the Red Sox and Mookie Betts. It's hard, and Muckler did a heck of a job on that.
Ask the Cleveland Guardians.
But
Bartolo-Colon trade.
I don't expect anything major to go on unless you want to. We've talked about trading one of the high-priced kids, and I don't see that happening unless do you really want to move Cousins or Power or somebody like that? I can't see that.
I saw something on
You know
X.
what? A lot of people are really down on Owen Power. And what's he done? What has he done?
I'll say this: beyond goaltending, it takes defensemen a long time to develop. For most defensemen, if you look at let me give you an example. Brian Campbell, right? Sabres drafted him in 97. I don't think he really turned into a very good defenseman until 05-06. That was almost 10 years later.
He was up and down.
Yeah, he was up and down
But
for a
that
couple of
time
years.
they were at least making the playoffs.
Right, yeah.
Now you got a team that can't even sniff the playoffs.
Yep. But
And Brian Campbell was not the first overall pick.
no.
Brian Campbell was, Owen Power was the first overall pick. How about playing like it? His coach came out earlier this year and said he got out muscled. Well, get your skinny little backside into the weight room.
I think the fear for a lot of teams is like what happened with when Hartford drafted Chris Pronger, and then they ended up trading him only like 2 or 3 years into his career, and look what he turned out to be, But it's what I was gonna say was I saw something on social media the other day it was an idea being floated out if anybody wanted to take Dylan Cousins. What about Seattle? Jason Botterill's the assistant general manager there. He might want to take Cousins on at that contract.
What's he going to send back?
They might have some guys, some NHL ready guys who are able to replace him. I'm not entirely sure what. I got to look at Seattle's roster, but
I don't want NHL ready guys. They need guys who can come in and play and help them now.
that's what I'm saying.
It's
NHL
not
ready
an
guys.
NHL ready guy.
Well, an NHL ready guy is not a guy who's playing in the league and has had some experience in the league. NHL ready means to me a guy who's in the AHL.
Well, okay. What I meant to say was experience.
We're splitting hairs.
Yeah.
Hey, for what it's worth, Devin Levi's got great numbers in the American Hockey League, and he needs to stay there, and
For a
it's
little
probably
bit,
a good trade bait because stop calling him up and down because my guess is that's an insult to James Reamer, and you're aggravating all the other guys in the room who has his back and wondering why they treat this kid this way. Because I like Devin Levi, but what's he done in the NHL? Not good enough.
Yep.
Well, I think next year he comes up and is the number 2 goalie,
Well,
the clear goalie, and that they see what happens with the two of them. I think they wanted to give him that full year of experience in the AHL, and I thought it was a pretty good idea.
they should have done it from the very beginning. But, he's got to come up and he's got to earn it and play like he belongs in the league, which to this point, that's been a struggle.
And that's hard to come up
It is. I know
once
it
in a
is.
while.
It is, and that's why I wish they hadn't done it.
They want to throw a little experience at him.
I wish they
Okay.
hadn't done it. I really do.
He gets more money that way.
Yeah, well, good for him.
You ever hear guys complain they're going up to the NHL?
Yeah, no, I'm not saying he would complain. I'm just saying the guys here
Yeah.
see this and they can't be too thrilled about that. It's like, why are you treating this guy?
They know it's a business.
Well, that is true. Does Kevin Adams make it to next season as the Sabres GM?
Ooh.
I don't think he should, but I think he will, just because I honestly don't think Terry Pagula has the cojones to get rid of him.
I'm sure Terry does. He's done it in the past.
Oh, yeah.
The will, maybe he doesn't want to. Doesn't want to pay another guy not to
That's
work.
what I'm saying.
It's hard to know what's happening behind the
willing to
scenes.
Well, that is
That's the catch.
that is.
We don't know how everybody's getting along, and surely this season was a big disappointment.
Yes, that's an
Because it's easy to forget. They were only a few points out of the playoffs under Granato last year, and that wasn't good enough.
And the year before they missed by 1 point. So they're so
So Granato suddenly looks good.
Well, they're so frustrating.
More than anything, Buffalo needs a veteran guy to be able to come in and overlook the roster, in which they haven't had throughout almost the entire drought.
You mean like a president of hockey operations?
Which they had for a couple of months, but
Well,
that turned
let's
out.
call him Lou Amarillo to give him a name.
No, okay, that's fair.
Someone who's been around and,
Lou Lamoriello,
and
Ken
knows
Holland.
the league.
Outside eyes.
Right.
Is Ken Holland out
He's
there?
available.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
He's available.
There's a guy. Didn't he build Detroit and Edmonton?
Yes.
Yes. It helps to have a Connor McDavid.
Yeah.
I mean, that does help. Do you think Pagula would ever do that? He hasn't done it yet.
Only he knows that, and he's not telling. And he's so secretive and doesn't speak to the media at all, and you just don't know what he's thinking.
I don't think. Yeah, I was going to say I don't think Terry's spoken to the Sabres media in 5 years or something like that.
He's not too good at it, and you can tell he's nervous,
Well, unfortunately,
even in any public speaking situation.
and unfortunately for him, his first press conference, he was very excited and kind of did a little,
Over the
our
top.
sole reason for existence is to win Stanley Cups. the media is going to latch on to that. Like Kevin Adams, we don't have palm trees. Those are things that stick with people. And unfortunately, whether or not they're correct doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's out there. And unfortunately, this team is just not delivered. And you know, on a totally different topic, which we'll save for next week, I think the league has made some big mistakes by destroying rivalries. Because even in bad years, you still had rival games in the Adams division. Montreal, Quebec, Boston, even the old Hartford Whalers. Those were rivalry games. Give you something to look forward to, even in a dismal season. That's my opinion.
I think that's the price you pay for a 32-team league.
I guess, but is that price too high? But back to the Sabres. Can they ever be fixed? And what's it going to take to fix them? Because, you know, what do you do if you're Lindy Ruff?
It's not easy.
No, it's not.
And that's these aren't, you know, baseball hockey cards that you flip around and make, you know, one-sided trades in your mind. Oh, they'll certainly go for Paul Sear for Connor McDavid or something like that.
Now that would be something.
His rights. It's hard to be a winner, and there's 32 teams knocking themselves out trying to beat everybody else. And the Sabres have just had a terrifically bad stretch. You know, thank goodness for the Jets.
That would be the New York Jets.
Right.
Yes.
Not the Winnipeg Jets.
Yes, yeah. Who are having a good year, but I don't know if I trust them in the playoffs.
No, I don't.
Again. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with our final segment after this.
Logistics Plus is a global transportation provider headquartered in Erie, PA, with locations worldwide, including right here in Western New York. Logistics Plus is consistently recognized as a fast-growing transportation and logistics company, great supply chain partner, top freight broker, leading project cargo manager, and a great place to work. With a strong passion for excellence, our 500-plus employees put the plus in logistics.
Or an efficient, personal approach for all of your transportation needs. More information about our Buffalo office is available at logisticsplus.com/Buffalo.
Do you insure a lot of businesses?
Yes, we do.
How about restaurants?
We got a bunch.
Do you cover property damage?
Yes, we do.
How about my equipment?
Covered.
How about sewer backup?
We got it.
What if my cook gets hurt?
They're covered.
Foodborne illnesses?
Covered.
What if my party tent goes down?
Covered under property damage.
And you say this is all under one policy?
One policy.
When do I pay?
Once a month.
Just one time?
Just one.
Is there anything you don't cover?
What's your record for consecutive questions asked?
31.
Tables. We don't do tables.
Gotta love Buffalo.
For more information, visit www.paulwolfagency.com.
Welcome back to This Week in Buffalo Sports on Buffalo Sports Page. I'm Stu Boyar along with Bud Bailey and Tony Fiorello. Unfortunately, the Buffalo, Western New York community has suffered a loss, Bud, that maybe you can tell us a little bit about.
Yes, we all lost Bob Salzman, who people might remember as the sports editor from the Tonawanda News for quite a while, and that's when, Stu, you and I first met him, and he went on to an editing career at the Buffalo News for some years and left to go into the horse racing business, which he always loved. And we've had a couple guys like that, Bob Summers and Bob Salzman, the two Bobs, used to talk a lot about horse racing. And, of course, I'd look for the nearest exit when they did because I couldn't contribute anything. But Bob was a very quiet, nice fellow. You could always count on him to do his job as a professional and move on without any histrionics. When he left, you just sort of like, well, he wasn't the type of person that I'd bump into. I didn't hang out at Fort Erie or Buffalo Raceway or anything like that, so I didn't have any reason to come and contact him. It's kind of like, oh dear. And the service for him is today, and they're having a little wake beforehand, which I'm going to stop in on the way home. But you know, he's 66. Obviously, it's you know. At this age, Stu, you know, like you have guys dying before that are younger than we are, and it's a little more painful. But sympathies to all the family, and we'll think of them.
I'm sorry. My condolences to the family. He was a very good guy. You sat next to him many times in the press box at Sabres games in the Odd. Bandits at Toronto Friday.
Back to work.
Yeah.
Now they're in Now, this is the Toronto Rock
Hamilton.
that usually plays its home games in Hamilton, but that arena is being renovated. So now they're in Mississauga.
Oh.
So in order to see the Toronto Rock, drive past their home in Hamilton and go up the QEW to Mississauga. Whatever it is, Toronto's been playing better after a slow start, and should be a good test. Toronto gave them a real game here when Toronto was winless, and the Bandits had their one tough game of the season. We'll see how the rematch goes, and then back home for the Bandits on Saturday night against San Diego.
Back to back. That's tough.
One of the few
Wow.
of the season.
That
But
is tough.
they've had 5 weeks off or something.
Yeah, it feels like they
Stupid
haven't.
schedule, yeah.
Yeah, it's like who made that?
Date availabilities.
Feels like they haven't played in forever. College basketball, Western New York. Damon's still unbeaten on the men's side. UB Canisius. Oh, the UB football coach, Pete Lembo, signed a new deal. He had a very good year, did a really good job. UB Canisius, Niagara, St. Bonaventure, college basketball.
Go ahead, Bob.
I'm going up to the Canisius Niagara game tonight, weather permitting. And I covered when they played a couple weeks ago at Canisius. And what struck me going in was that none of the players except one kid from Canisius had ever played in a Canisius Niagara game. They're all transfers. Niagara's roster completely overhauled. One of the 3 teams in the country to have a completely changed roster with a same coach. And Canisius got a lot of different things. And I said, how do you tell the kids about this rivalry? And both coaches were quite eloquent. Jim Christian Canisius said, I wanted to drive it home that this is a rivalry that started in 1907. And they've been playing each other more or less, not every year. They had a fight in the 50s over some stupid thing. But they've played each other forever. And these are the type of games that has some history, and you need to learn to appreciate that. And Greg up at Niagara had similar thoughts about how much this little rivalry means. It was probably for so many of the alumni at Canisius and Niagara, outside of the rare St. Bonaventure game, which is once a year, probably the only game they pay attention to anymore, because it's such a small conference and it's hard to get publicity in this town the way things are, and they have trouble competing, and they've sunk down the list and the rankings. But it's always kind of fun to watch them play each other because it's a local thing. The kids sometimes meet in gyms during the off season when they're in the same place. It's less now, but so I'll be up there if I can find my way through the snow.
You'll get there.
And we'll see what happens.
Question for both of you guys. Both of you are Syracuse alums, correct?
Yeah, be careful where you go.
I was just gonna say this is not a Buffalo question, but any thoughts on the Orange?
The
basketball
team is horrible, and the football season had a good year. And truthfully, I can't even watch Syracuse basketball there. They've fallen off the map, and hopefully next year's.
I think they're behind the curve on the NIL stuff.
Has to be, right?
And
supposedly they have a great class coming in next year.
Carmelo Anthony's kid is their hot shot, and he'll attract some interest. But it's just hard. College sports is just so difficult these days. And, I mean, Syracuse football had a terrific year by most standards. Next year, the schedule is unbelievably tough. I mean, it opens versus Tennessee and Atlanta.
Good luck.
They play like Notre Dame, SMU, Clemson, Miami, all on the road.
Well, you know what? That's what they get for leaving the Big East and doing the money grab.
You couldn't. Well, football drives everything in
Yes, it does.
the college calendar,
Yes.
and you can't blame them for making that
money.
move.
No,
I mean,
I
they
don't.
got bills to pay, but
think how the Big East, especially basketball, was fun. Again,
yes,
rivalry games, Georgetown, St. John's,
yeah,
Rutgers. Now they can't,
The whole
even
crew.
beat Georgetown. That is an unforgivable sin of the highest order.
I used to have a T-shirt that said my 2 favorite teams are Syracuse and anyone that beats Georgetown.
There you go. I've seen that T-shirt. It usually says Yankees.
I'll have to get that.
I thought you would have had that one too. Times are tough over there in Orange Land is what I would say. Just a little plug for Western New York athletics. We've got a lot of high school basketball and hockey boys and girls playoff action coming up, and we're all excited about that. At least I am, because I am doing a whole bunch of games and looking forward to two of them. I have two girls hockey games tomorrow night and then a girls basketball game on Friday. But anyway, final thoughts, anybody?
Any thoughts on the World Cup of Hockey? Well, not World Cup of Hockey, Four Nations face-off.
Have the players met each other yet?
To me, it's okay to shut your game down for the Olympics. I don't have much interest in this, to be perfectly honest.
I won't go on for 10 minutes because we've talked enough, but all-star games are getting tougher and tougher to justify. The contact sports have always been difficult because nobody wants to make a tackle in the Pro Bowl and get hurt. And hockey, there's no checking. So they're trying to figure out a way to make the games interesting. The NBA games have just gotten to be
crazy,
bizarre. 192, 189 in overtime.
Crazy. Baseball all-stars.
Baseball's the only game that looks like baseball.
Yeah.
And
they I don't
know how you do that.
And they need to go back to their team uniforms in the All-Star game. Enough of the City Connect stuff where you can't tell who's who. I think we're about to wrap it up. By the way, I think Damon men's basketball team is the only undefeated team in the area. Last time I looked, they're 20-0. That's impressive. All right, want to remind everybody that we'll be back next week. Once again, our sponsors. The show's brought to you by the Paul Wolf Insurance Agency, Logistics Plus of Buffalo, and Dan Chacha, Personal Injury Attorneys. Thank you, Bud Bailey. Thank you, Tony Fiorello. And thank you, Tim Gardner, our producer. My name is Stu Boyar. And thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next week.